To receive the E. David Spong Lifetime Achievement Award, an individual must have made sustained, exceptional, and far-reaching contributions to the Baldrige enterprise in a manner worthy of national recognition. The award recognizes the entirety of an individual's career. Lifetime Achievement Award recipients have changed their worlds and inspired others to do the same. It is fitting, then, that the award should be named after and that its first recipient should be David Spong. David, would you please stand up? David, throughout your 54-year career and even well into your retirement, you have been a visionary leader. You have held multiple leadership roles over the years, including more than 43 years in the aerospace industry, mostly at McDonnell Douglas and Boeing. Outside of the aerospace industry, you have held many important national and state leadership positions, including President of the American Society for Quality, Chairman of the Baldrige Foundation Board of Directors, Chairman of the Board of Overseers for the Baldrige Foundation, Chairman of NIST's Visiting Committee of Advanced Technology, and Vice Chair of the California Council of Excellence. You are known for inspirational leadership and for consistency over time, the consistency of both your leadership style and your commitment to excellence. That consistency yielded remarkable results. You are the only person to lead organizations in two different sectors to the Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award. In the manufacturing sector with Boeing airlift and tanker programs in 1998, and in the service sector with Boeing aerospace support in 2003. David, you are a quiet, humble leader with an incredible list of accomplishments. On behalf of the Baldrige Foundation, I am proud, both professionally and personally, to present you with the inaugural E. David Spong Lifetime Achievement Award. David, come on up. Notice the setup here.
Okay, well, thank you. Picture first. While I fix it. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, family. Good afternoon, friends and colleagues. This is my 19th Quest for Excellence, and it's always like Old Home Week. George, thank you for those kind words. Mary, thank you for your kind words. And Kate, you're out there somewhere. Thank you for your kind words also. I'm delighted and honored to have a Lifetime Achievement Award named after me and to be the first recipient. I thought in the 15 minutes of time allotted to me, I would not give you a lecture on Baldrige. You know it all. I thought what I'd do was describe my lifelong journey towards excellence. And you notice I said towards. Maybe I'll get there. And the key learnings along the way. I grew up as the youngest of 5 children to a mother and father there You can see them in Hastings on their honeymoon in 1926. I was born in England, if you haven't figured that out yet. And that's me, the little fat one in the front in that picture. Both my mother and father were craftsmen. My mother's craft was not for me, dressmaking, but all my father's tools interested me greatly. I like to say I was an engineer in my mother's womb. As a small boy, I used or tried to use the tools from my father's workshop with some success, making things which my mother described as crazy contraptions. In grade school and in high school, I took courses in woodworking, learning how to use the tools I had struggled with in my father's workshop. My father died when I was very young, and my brother, in the middle of the picture there, was a mentor and a guide for me. There was no doubt in my mind where I was headed. I was going to be an engineer working on airplanes. You can see me launching a model airplane in the right-hand side of that slide, which I made when I was about 15. The next big step in my quality journey was when I was accepted into an apprenticeship program in the United Kingdom Ministry of Supply facility. It was called originally the Balloon Factory, then the Royal Aircraft Factory, then the Royal Aircraft Establishment, which is what it was named when I was there. This program was started in 1905 in the then Balloon Factory. It was the same program my brother had graduated from before me. In one sense, it was based on the craft apprenticeships that were started in the 1600s. And in fact, I was bound to the United Ministry of Supply for 5 years. I don't really know what that meant, but I was a little afraid of it. However, the main difference between that and the old crafts was I was called a student apprentice, and we didn't learn a particular craft, but rather got an appreciation of how things were made, both in metal and wood, and, maybe more importantly, ultimately, was to earn a Bachelor's of Science degree in engineering. We spent half time in the various workshops and technical departments and half time in college. The first year was spent in the training shop where we learned hand skills and machining skills. One of the pioneers of the Balloon Factory was one Samuel Franklin Cowdery, later called Cody, who was born in Davenport, Iowa. He ended up in England, and he was born in 1867, and he died in 1913 of an airplane crash, the first one there. He was the first man to fly an airplane in Britain on October the 16th, 1908. There was one particular tree that he used to tie his airplane to. You can see it in the bottom left-hand side. When I got there, 1956, it was in pretty bad shape. And so it was decided to cast a replica in aluminium, or aluminum as you insist on calling it. And I was in the foundry at the time, and so I got to help cast this tree, and actually that's the aluminum tree in that picture that you can see. Also, while I was in the foundry, which, by the way, if you've ever been in a foundry, we spent most of our time shoveling sand, they decided to build a brand new 1956 model of a 1917 SE5A, which you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, and I got to cast the machine gun triggers. It was at the RAE where I had my first epiphany with respect to quality. One of the tools we were required to make was the C-clamp shown here. Cast your eyes on the right-hand one of that pair. This was made of 1/2-inch thick steel plate, which had to be hacksawed to rough shape and then filed flat and square. No machines allowed. At some point, I realized I'd made a mistake, and you can see the mistake. The angle is a little wrong on the left-hand side bottom. I continued to work on it, hoping that no one would notice. At some point, the apprentice master, and yes, that's what they were called, said there's something funny about that clamp. So he measured it and he said, and this is him, he has it in his hand, he throws it on the bench and he says, "Start over, lad." I'd had many, many hard working hours in that clamp, and it would have been a perfectly good clamp. You can see it. But it didn't conform to the drawing. So there was my first lesson. It's got to conform to the drawing. And I call that little q. Little q means it is a conformance to requirements or specifications. Very, very important. And mine didn't, at least the one on the left-hand side didn't. Later, I was assigned to the main machine shop where, in spite of being students, we were assigned simple production jobs. I was to make some explosive bolts. The little sketch in the middle is my memory of what they looked like. See, these consisted of threaded cylinders and which are sealed with a bolt and used to separate two stages of a rocket. They still use them today, not those ones, but some ones. They were made of very high-strength steel, which was very difficult to machine. Because the tools wore as I made them, I matched a set of bolt and cylinder in pairs, left them together, and turned them in and got another job. Imagine my surprise a few weeks later when an inspector found me and said, "Do you know which bolt goes with which cylinder?" He had 6 cylinders in one hand and 6 bolts in the other. Well, the math majors in the room will figure that's a pretty large permutation. And I said, no. I have no idea what happened to those parts because they weren't interchangeable. So my next learning was, no matter, even if you do make them to the drawing, they won't necessarily be interchangeable. This came back to me some 40 years later when on the C-17 program, that great airplane program, we achieved significant quality, schedule, and cost improvements by empowering our mechanics who built the airplane to inspect their own work, and all but eliminated the inspection of the product after the products were completed. So it took me 40 years to come back to where I had been in the beginning, inspecting my own work and making sure it fit the drawing. After I graduated, I joined the aerospace industry, immigrated to the United States, and in 1991 started work at Douglas Aircraft Company, part of McDonnell Douglas, in Long Beach, California, on the then troubled, beleaguered C-17 program. You can see me there in 1961 with my dashing cravat around my neck. That was about the same time that John McDonnell, second picture, nephew of Sandy McDonnell, who was instrumental in getting the Baldrige program started, put out a memo stating we were to use the Baldrige criteria in our businesses. It was termed Total Quality Management System Internal Evaluation. Maybe you remember it. I never really knew what total quality meant, but I figured it out later on. But I remember thinking at the time, who has time for all this soft stuff? We have airplanes to build. However, we dutifully wrote our internal application and a team of examiners performed a self-assessment. I remember when I met with them, after they'd reviewed my section, they were very pleasant. They smiled a lot, but did not cut me any slack. I realized that talking a good story did not help. It wasn't about looking good, it was about being good. But as time went on, our scores got better. And wonder of wonders, I noticed our performance was getting better too. Well, after we received the Baldrige Award in January 1999, remember that date, for the Boeing Airlift and Tanker Organization, of which the C-17 was the large portion, I was a full-fledged believer in what I call Big Q, quality in everything. We then applied all we'd learned and did it again in 2003 in another organization in a different sector, Boeing Aerospace Support. And you can see us receiving the awards in the bottom right pictures, one from President Clinton, one from President Bush, and one Debbie Collard is in that last picture. And so I have to tell a story about Debbie here. In 2000, I was asked to go to St. Louis from wonderful California to run the Aerospace Support Organization. I didn't much want to go. Valerie definitely didn't want to go. And I felt naked. I didn't have my team around me, so I said to Debbie, will you come and work with me and help us move along? And she said, well, there's two conditions, one of which I don't have to move to St. Louis, and the other one says, if we receive an award, I'm on stage with you. There she is. She's on stage. After we received that second award, Debbie made this beautiful desk plaque for me, and as you can read it just as easy as I can read it to you. But what a wonderful plaque to give me. These days, I spend a lot of time in my workshop making all manner of things, but mostly clock-related. And yes, if something goes wrong and I can't fix it, I start over. However, I am not constrained by schedule or cost, only Big Q. So you asked, do my parts always conform to the drawing? Well, no. But if that happens, I change the drawing. And I term it a design improvement. The slide shows three 1800, circa 1800 replica clocks, all English designs with a genuine, old, antique, 1800-ish movement in each one of them. The left one is called a drop dial. You can probably figure that out. The middle one is called a cushion foot. And the last one on the right is one side of a double dial that would have been in a post office or a train station. Don't ask me how long it took. So one does not get to my point in life by oneself. I've had a lot of help and support along the way. So I'd like to thank, firstly and most importantly, Valerie, my wife of 52.9 years, for all her support and encouragement. In addition, here today, my daughter Allison, shown in the right-hand side of the picture with the rest of her family. She's down in the front of the table here. And Catherine, who's also in the front. And today she is brought with her, Barry, her husband, Juliana, and baby Beatrice. The other two are in school doing what Mary told them to do. Also, I would like to thank Debbie Collard, our adopted third daughter, for all her help. She was by my side for both journeys to excellence, doing her best to keep me in process. You ask her how successful she was. Here we are together at a C-17 ceremony when we were delivering the last C-17 to the United States Air Force. And I have to tell you this, that Debbie is now famous all over the world. The answer to the question is, how do you get started on Baldrige? You need to get yourself a Debbie. And I haven't forgotten someone also sitting at the Spong table. So last but by no means least is Juliana, who turned 18 on February the 25th. She's still young enough we can talk about how old she is. She is nicknamed Baby Baldrige because she attended QFE in April 1999 in Kathy's arms, just 2 months old. All the ladies oohed and ahed over her, taking turns to hold her, and finally it was Harry's turn. So a few years later, when I was at the C-17 farewell party, Debbie Collins showed this slide captioned, "Spong gives up granddaughter to Harry Hertz, head of the Baldrige National Quality Program." Finally, one last thank you to the Baldrige Foundation for this award. And my one thing I'll say to all of you today, go forth and live Big Q.